Alright, so next up is our Slightly Boring Platter. So this is a very similar style to the boring platter. We're using the same template, very similar techniques. And the reason I've stacked this one after the Mini Boring Platter and we came up with this design after the Boring Platter is it's kind of an expression of the Boring Platter, but just kind of letting go a little bit more and concentrating more on the bends and folds and the movement of the clay. So this is a really good one to follow up straight after the Mini Boring Platter. And again, doing this on a smaller scale, it just takes the pressure off and you can have a bit more of a play. So this is really focusing on practicing and getting used to how the sort of the clay holds up and will hold itself in those little movements. So yeah, we again, I sort of stick with that rule of the third, a third, a third. But we're going to have a real play around with this too. And in a section later in the course, we have a full section that's going to be our signature designs, where we'll go over a lot of these at a larger scale. We'll have some creative sessions on how we can use what we're learning throughout the course to sort of take the pieces of this that you love, pieces that you don't like, and really sort of make it your own and do your own versions and have some real sort of creative freedom. But for now, it's really good to follow these steps so that you can learn the procedures and get used to what we're doing. So I'm going to chuck the camera over here so you can see directly down on what we're doing, and we'll jump into it. Woo! So first things first, we start off with our nice beautiful sheet of clay. I roll all of these out to about 0.8, 1 centimeter to 0.8, depending on how delicate you want it to be. But about 1 centimeter to 8 mils is about bang on. That's a pretty good starting point. So we lay our template down. Again, we're just going to freestyle this. So with this one, I like it to be slightly more oval and less surfboard shape. So I'm going to come around and we're going to go bigger again, just because why not. Go around. Like so. Get rid of these. Just remember all your scraps, wrap them in plastic straight away so that you can use them again, and you can just wedge that clay straight back up. Remove our template, and it's just the same as all the others. So the first and most important part is getting our slab to be spot on. So we're going to roll our sponge around, apply that pressure, nice, even, smooth, gliding, like so. Run your sponge over the slab to make sure that's nice and smooth and you're happy with it. Run our rib. You might find the odd little bubble. Now if you find a little bubble, you can use your needle and you can take the air out of it, rub over to squeeze all the air out of it. And sometimes, if it's quite a large bubble, you might need to do that a few times. Okay, so we're going to flip the clay over. Both hands, lift the clay up, flip the clay over. Again, damp sponge, not a wet sponge. And we're going to roll our sponge around. Like so. And just to demonstrate putting the stamp underneath, I'm going to make this the bottom side, just because it's got a little bit of a funny edge here. So you just get your stamp or your needle and scratch in your name, or use the stamp to mark an edge, just like that. Flip the clay over again using both our hands, like this, up, over. The other way you can do it, which is good for larger sheets of clay, is by going underneath and just flipping over this way. One thing to remember is every time we flip the clay over, we're going to stretch the clay out just like pizza dough, which we'll cover in the boring platter when we make the large one, and in the perfecting our slab little mini workshop as well. Okay, so now we want to start again with our large tail end, and we're going to focus on a slightly bigger curve. So it's the same as before. We're going to lift up that edge, put our hand underneath, and I'm going to raise my hand slightly, allow the clay to rest over it, and then what I'm going to do is apply a little bit of pressure, and I'm curling my hand around like so. So I'll just repeat that. I put my hand under, I lay my hand in, and I curl my hand around. You don't have to do that, but it just adds a little bit more movement and motion, which we're gonna have it waving this way, waving that way, and it just creates a little bit more interest throughout the piece. Okay, now we're gonna spin our board around, and we're gonna put the next little fold in. Same process again. So we have our large one. We're going to put this next little one in here. So we lift our clay up, fold our hand in slightly lower this time, drape the clay down. Again with our right hand, we're going to apply a little bit of pressure, and we're going to twist our hand the opposite way, just like so. So my hand goes in, gliding together like so. You're going to turn your hand. This will take a bit of practice. Obviously I've done this loads of times, so I'll make it look pretty easy. Make 10, 15 of these. Squish the clay up and start again, just to get into the habit of it. Now we're going to spin it around. Now that we have our large fold, we have the next fold. Now we're going to work on a little one through here. So this is the fired finished piece. We have our large fold. The next one we've just completed. We're going to add this and a nice little folded edge, just for a good amount of practice on getting all of these steps through. So, same thing again. I'm going to use the opposite this time. I'm going to lift up with my left hand. And see, every time we put these bends and folds in, the clay's going to shift. So, we want to start by just putting the pieces in, and then we'll finesse them, because it's all going to shift and move just a little bit as we go. So I need to shuffle that back. So we lift this up, and I'm going to put it in about here. This one's going to be a small one, so I'm not going to put my whole hand in. I'm going to put kind of about that much of my hand, and I'm going to twist my hand just a little bit. My hand goes in. I'm going to twist my hand, slide my hand out a little bit, applying a bit of pressure with this hand here to push down just gently. I'm not squishing, it's just gentle pressure, and then I slide that hand across. And that's that last fold. So that's the 3 folds or creases, whatever you want to call them. in the clay that I really want to have. Now you can decide whether we want to put a nice ruffled edge in, whether it makes sense, which I want to. On this tail end, I want to put a bit of a curl. I'm going to hold up this edge and I'm just going to run my finger back and forward and kind of massage up that edge and go steeper every time. I want to make it a little bit more dramatic than what I want it to be, because the clay, as it dries and fires, the clay will soften and shift down a little bit. So every bend and fold we do, we want to slightly exaggerate, knowing it's all going to slump and sit down just a little bit. As the clay fires, it's going to shrink and come in that little bit as well. So as you can see, this is soft clay. This is the exact same size piece, fired and finished. So you can really see the difference in the size. Every clay is different. They shrink from about anywhere from kind of 5 to 12%. White clays like this will shrink more. So have that in mind, make everything slightly larger than you need to. General rule is 1/2 to 1 centimeter shrinkage. So we've got that nice little fold there. I quite like that. Now I'm going to curl that edge. So I start by lifting the clay up, putting my finger in, and I'm going to glide my finger around to loosen that edge. Now fingers together. I need one finger to make sure the clay doesn't move, just to lock it in place. And then I glide my finger around. Glide my finger around and slowly make that pitch of your fingers sharper and sharper, steeper and steeper, gradually folding it up. So I have the basic form of my piece now that I'm really happy with. So now I'm going to go through with a damp sponge and I'm going to get rid of these finger marks, any little cracks that may have shown, especially on these little ridge lines. I'm going to get rid of all of those, make sure I'm perfectly happy with it. Now, one of the most important things to remember to avoid any cracks is to make sure that all of these bends and folds, that you can see the change in the pitch. And so what I mean by that is that the angles, they don't fold over themselves. So if the fold is like this and the fold goes over itself like that, so if this fold, if this bit of clay is sitting over, so sitting kind of over itself, it will crack through this little joint. So you can see the pitch change nice and softly through here and through here. You can't have them overlapping each self. So if this was folding over that, it will crack through here. So it's really important to have these bends and folds to fold over softly and naturally and not have any sharp edges. We'll go through that again in the finessing your platter part of the section, but it's good to remember at this part here, keep the bends and folds nice and soft and natural. Don't over dramatize them, and just have a little bit of fun. My suggestion is to make at least 2 of these and at least 2 of the mini boring platters before you move on to the next part of the lesson. This will just give you a really good foundation with rolling out your slab of clay, with making the bends and folds, using your sand clays if that's what you're doing, and just give you a little bit of confidence before we jump into the next part, and then everything in the boring platter will really start to make sense.